For example, there could be fireworks in the House of Representatives this afternoon over the NaRRa bill. The debate will begin this afternoon or continue this afternoon, and I gather that the battle lines are being drawn and the government and the opposition are likely to lock horns again over the bill. And the background, the controversy over this bill took another turn yesterday when 28 civil society groups and individuals issued a joint statement to the media yesterday afternoon, essentially saying to the Holness administration that it should re-engage stakeholders about the NaRRa bill. And they have written to the Prime Minister, to the government, outlining their concerns about the limited scope of engagement surrounding the bill currently before the Parliament. And as you will hear in this report from Mahiri Stewart, that statement from the civil society groups and a number of individuals really intensified, or made clear the battle lines leading up to the Parliament this afternoon. And after Mahiri's report, I'll have a comment or two on that. Here is Mahiri's report.
In a joint statement led by human rights lobby group Jamaicans for Justice, JFJ, and Jamaica Environment Trust, JET, on Monday, the groups say despite issues raised by various stakeholders, the government has shown no signs of addressing the raft of concerns expressed by various stakeholders about NaRRa. JFJ and JET say they formally submitted detailed concerns and recommendations to the Office of the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition on March 30. In their joint submission, JET and JFJ highlighted several critical concerns with the bill in its current form. These include the highly centralized CEO-driven structure with insufficient independent oversight and weak provisions for transparency, accountability, and public participation. The submission also expressed worry about what it says is the absence of a clearly defined governing board with delineated responsibilities and inadequate safeguards to ensure long-term resilience, environmental protection, and public trust. It adds that to date, no response has been received from the Office of the Prime Minister, leaving uncertainty as to whether these submissions are being meaningfully considered in the parliamentary process. The statement highlights commentary in the media, as well as statements from the Incorporated Master Builders Association of Jamaica, West Central St. James MP Marlene Malahoo Fort of the JLP, and several members of the opposition as instances in which concerns were raised about NaRRa. The group says despite the range of perspectives, the tone of the government's side of the debate appears more focused on defending the bill than constructively addressing legitimate critique and alternative proposals. In light of these shortcomings, the groups are calling for the immediate convening of a genuine multi-stakeholder dialogue. They want the written submissions from all relevant stakeholder groups to be accepted within the next 2 weeks, followed by structured discussions over 1 to 2 days to fully interrogate the issues raised. The groups say if this does not happen, the government should instead follow Opposition Leader Mark Golding's suggestion of establishing a joint select committee with deliberations and recommendations completed within 6 weeks. They note that while they recognize the urgency of advancing legislation to support post-Hurricane Melissa reconstruction and long-term national resilience, expediency must not come at the expense of good governance. Mahiri Stewart for Nationwide News.
Thank you, Mahiri. And in their joint submission, JET that's Environment Trust and Jamaicans for Justice, highlighted several critical concerns with the bill in its current form. Among these concerns, the highly centralized, CEO-driven structure, yes, and what that means in terms of accountability. Then there are the issues related to the guidelines of public procurement, that the need for speed, but also to ensure that we have value for money and that we're not abusing the system, and those with power can abuse that power. The CEO of JET, Dr. Teresa Rodriguez Moody, she told Nationwide at 5 yesterday that the government must accept criticisms about the deficiencies in the bill. Right? This is what she said on Nationwide at 5 yesterday.
Everything that is being said, there's no real engagement on the issues, there's just pushback. You raise the issue about accountability, you hear the pushback about, oh no, we have all of these different mechanisms in place, so things will be fine. You raise another issue, you get another, oh, don't worry about it. You know, it won't be an issue, we need to stop talking about these things and we just need to act. If we don't get it right, then we'll have billions of dollars that are spent inappropriately, possibly.
That is the Executive Director of the Environment Trust, Dr. Moody, right? They say they have formally, as you heard in that report, written to the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, and they have to date not received any response from the Office of the Prime Minister. Yeah? Well, according to Dr. Moody, this indicates an unwillingness by the government to address the concerns of the groups.
That suggests that there's an unwillingness to engage on some serious concerns, that people that are, this is not just a partisan issue, right? So people from both sides and technical groups and academic groups have actually raised as a concern. So I think that also sends a strong signal to say that we're not really interested in engaging on some of these serious matters.
Well, this statement from the groups, as I said earlier, is a build-up to what is likely to unfold in the Parliament this afternoon. And we should follow that very closely, because given what we know of this administration, how it operates, if there's one thing you can't say about them, is that they are deaf. It's not an administration that pretends to be deaf. And a Prime Minister who listens. We have seen several examples of that. And I expect this afternoon that the Prime Minister, supported by several of the front bench, members of the front bench, to take on and address these concerns. And at the heart of this, there's a view, there's a feeling in the government that, listen, there are those with political agenda to delay the working of NaRRa. Because if NaRRa gets the job done, it is going to result in political dividends for the Jamaica Labour Party administration of Andrew Holness. They feel that way. They really do, talking with several of them. The hurdle they will have to overcome this afternoon and from here on, they will have to convince people, including the civil society organizations, that it's not about just the political dividends, but about getting it right and therefore accepting the concerns, several of the concerns raised, the procurement guidelines, the systems of accountability, tracking the awarding of the contracts and the performance to make sure that NaRRa is not being abused for corrupt gain. And I think that is a hurdle facing the administration this afternoon in the Parliament, that it must address these concerns and convince people who are not on the left or on the right or on the opposition or in the government that, listen, we hear these concerns and these are the steps we are putting in place, to address these concerns. One man said to me late last week, we can't wait on the PAC and the PAAC to do the investigations and the checks after the horse is bolted. We need to have the systems of accountability, yes, in real time, so that when the contracts are being awarded, they go to entities and individuals who can get the job done and competitively, awarded the contracts, and they do not go to friends of the administration or ministers or blah, blah, blah. Yes? It must be awarded on a competitive basis. Therefore, what are the guidelines? And I think that is the challenge and hurdle facing the Prime Minister and his team in the Parliament this afternoon. And the opposition, I'm sure, is going to come there to pile on the pressure. And this is the second point I want to make, because I've been around for a little while. Yes? This is how democracies ought to work. This is how a democratic society ought to be working. Where civil society organizations, the opposition, other interest groups seek to hold governments to account. And frankly, this is a credit to the democracy that we have here in Jamaica. It still has a lot. It needs a lot of work. But this is it. When I heard that statement yesterday from the 28 civil society groups, because what it means is that the government is being held to account. Their feet is being put to the fire. So this afternoon, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, not industry minister, but all the Minister Samuda from Water and Environment, we expect all of them to contribute. And this is the bar they will have to surmount this afternoon. How we are going to get NaRRa going with speed, efficiency, and systems of accountability. NaRRa is going to be undertaking the single largest public expenditure in independent Jamaica. We cannot get it wrong. We have to get it right. And we know there's corruption in this society, and people try to beat the system. And who can get pop off and who can't get pop off. Yes? We know we have a problem. Time for the break.
My hands were steady, my eyes were clear and bright.